Hello, namaste. Namaste, Dr. Kausthub Desikachar.
Namaste, Katja Ujcic. So nice to be back with you.
So nice to have this interview again with you, dear Kaustuba, and all our listeners that are already joining us. So we have a heart. This means love, and also everything is okay with technical things. So you can hear us and see us, I suppose. So warmly welcome Dr. Kausthub Desikachar and all the listeners and viewers of this interview. So now we are again with you here after a while. Welcome. So in the past year, we were pushed out of our normality, out of our center, if we were in the center before. Many felt fear, many felt loneliness, but many also used this time as a challenge and turned it into success. Like you, Kastuba, didn't you?
I
Yes.
do my best. I do my best. I've also had my fair share of challenges this time, but overall, I am very grateful for what has happened.
Yes, but I'm sure that majority of people experienced new depths of our individual and collective subconscious. Some of us suffered in silence, some of us loud, and we all are looking for the way out. So today we are going to talk about power of freedom and its traps. Can we go to the path of the madness when we are searching for the freedom, or we can choose liberation? Dr. Kausthub Desikachar is going to talk with us about that. I'm your host, Katja Ujcic. I am art and yoga therapist from Slovenia, and Dr. Kausthub Desikachar is our yoga teacher, spiritual mentor, yoga therapist. He's holding the lineage of Krishnamacharya and TKV Desikachar, and he's a mentor of a lot of students around the world. We were conducting these interviews now for more than a year, for 1 year, actually every 2 weeks. So we were really proud of that and proud of you that you joined us. So we all show the support to each other. So today our interview will be madness or liberation, the eccentricity of freedom. But before we start this roller coaster, I would like to invite Kaustuba to chant for us.
Thank you, Katja, for wonderful introduction. And since we are beginning after a long time, I would like to begin with a chant that is dedicated to the teacher.
Good.
Chari Thava Kalatram Yashascharuchitran Dhanam Merutulyam Manaschainalagnam Gurorang Gripadme Tatakin 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 Tatakim Kalatran Dhanam Putra Pautradi Sarvam Graham Bandhavas Sarvametadhijatam Manaschainalagnam Gurorangripadme Tatakin 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 Kadangadivedo Mukhe Shastra Vidya Kavitvadigadyam Supadyam Karote Manaschainalagnam Gurorangripadme Tatakin 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 tatakim videsheshu manyasvadesheshu dhanyah sadachara vritteshu matto nachanyah मनश्चेन्न लग्नं गुरोरङ्घ्रिपद्मे ततक्किं 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 ततक्किम् क्षमामण्डले भूपभूपालवृन्दैः सदा सेवितं यस्य पादारविन्दम् मनश्चेन्न लग्नं गुरोरङ्घ्रिपद्मे ततक्किं 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 यशो मे गतं दिक्षु दानप्रतापात् जगद्वस्तु सर्वं करेयत्प्रसादात् मनश्चेन्न लग्नं गुरोरङ्घ्रिपद्मे ततक्किं 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 ततक्किम् न भोगेन योगेन वा वाजिराजौ न कान्तामुखेनैव वित्तेषु चित्तम् मनश्चेन्न लग्नं गुरोरङ्घ्रिपद्मे ततक्किं 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 ततक्किम् अरण्येन वा स्वस्य गेहेन कार्ये न देहे मनो वर्तते मे त्वनर्घ्ये मनश्चेन्न लग्नं गुरोरङ्घ्रिपद्मे ततक्किं 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 ततक्किम् गुरोरष्टकं यः पठेत् पुण्यदेही यतिर्भूपतिब्रह्मचारी च गेही यतिर्लभेत् वाञ्छितार्थं पदं ब्रह्म संज्ञं गुरोरुक्तवाक्ये मनो यस्य लग्नम् श्री सर्वेभ्यो गुरुभ्यो नमो नमः। शांति शांति शांति। Namaste friends, namaste Katya.
Namaste, thank you very much. So let's welcome Kausthub, Aureli, Lenka, Arone, hi. Erika is also with us. Kasturi, Maria Alejandra, hello. Oh, we have Raven, Natalie in Bala G, hello. Warmly welcome. So, we already have a nice smile on Kaustub's face, and we are wondering.
Because of the way you are pronouncing Balaji's name, I was very curious whether you are going to say Balaji like you are usually saying in the Slovenian.
But I didn't, huh?
Yeah, you didn't. So I'm smiling because you are very careful today.
We have a very careful topic. We need to be very, very gentle and very accurate and precise in that, Kaustubh. So, looks like we are all getting a little bit crazy in this world. If we were not crazy also before, but looks like there's still room, yeah? Did we enter in some sort of roller coaster of collective insanity?
Well, I think you have to speak for yourself and maybe the rest of the world, because I did not become crazy in these last 1.5 years. I am so privileged that I was born crazy. So for me, this is actually very familiar territory, this kind of insanity, like you say. But yes, it looks like the world is going through a time of madness, a time of insanity because of so many different reasons. Firstly, many people, they don't know really what kind of news to trust, because each day there is some new story that is coming. First, they said that it was coming from animals. Then they said, no, it's coming from a lab. Then they said, no, it's coming from animals. Then they said, no, it's coming from lab. And there is more and more variations that are coming. This is one kind of insanity because we really don't know what to trust. The second kind of madness is we don't know how to live. We have lost the capacity to know how to live, because we thought that the way we were living pre-corona time was the way to live. But actually, the corona has taught us that we can live another way. There is another way of living. But we are not comfortable with that because our expectation is to go back to the past way of living. So there is that sense of madness as well. And then there is the sense of madness from the disease itself, because so many people are dying. And especially in India, I can say that many close people have started to die. There's a lot of close people, like family, friends, family members. I lost my cousin to corona. I lost some family members to corona. I have lost some friends of family members to corona. So the circle is coming closer, and there is a lot of uncertainty in people as well. So there is a general sense of madness. And the thing is, it's not eccentricity, it's actually madness or insanity, because something is not working right, things are not flowing. For me, the way I define eccentricity and madness is eccentricity has its own flow. Eccentricity is a state where we are a little bit different from the normal. Like, I am eccentric, I'm not normal, fitting the society in many ways, but it flows. It's flowing. It's not that something is wrong. The things that I'm interested in, normal society is not interested in. But it doesn't make me mad, because in my strange way, things flow. Whereas it's an insanity or a madness now, because things are not moving literally. Like, flights are not going so much, trains are not going, people are not moving so much to meet each other, etc. It's only recently that in some countries like Europe and England and some other places, that some movement has started. But in many places, there is a lack of movement as well. And that is also madness. There is people get mad when there's a traffic jam. That kind of insanity and anger related madness is coming right now in society. But I see light at the end of the tunnel. I think some things will start shifting.
Good to know. Good to hear that. Yes. So in our energy field, we have, let's say, the door to spirituality, to God. In yoga, we can say that this is the seventh chakra. Yeah. So, which is in a way, let's say, inviting us to to live spiritually, to invite the spirituality in our life. So we are beaming also that part of us, that door to spirituality. And humans, we were searching for a long time to fulfill this, let's say, function of a connection to spirituality. It's natural. Yeah. So searching for something greater than ourselves, we are searching for freedom. What would that freedom be? Freedom from what then?
I think it's not a freedom from something, it's actually a freedom to something. It's, I think, at a very fundamentally deep level, we are all searching for the freedom to truly be ourselves. We are all wearing a mask because society has imposed this mask on all of us. Success is defined by a job. Success is defined by how much money you have in the bank. Success is defined as whether you have one house or two houses. Success is defined as whether you are hitting the right milestones, like, oh, you get married, then you have a few children, then you have grandchildren, then you have a retirement plan, etc. Success is defined in certain, what you call, constructs that are very stressful. And if we are all trying to fit that structure, we cannot really truly be ourselves. What if somebody does not want to work for in a government job, but wants to be an artist, a musician, a therapist? Now, if he or she cannot be themselves to be that, that's not really liberation. What if somebody does not want to be in a marriage or be in a relationship, wants to just be individual, independent? Society should allow it and accept it. So in a certain way, we have constructed very rigid boundaries that are based on identities. And we need to just be ourselves and not worry about these identities. So that's one liberation that we are searching, just to be free, to feel free, to fundamentally be ourselves. That's where the Mooladhara is so important, because that defines who we are. But why we are not free? Oh, because we are also trapped by certain pre-recorded memories and impressions that is called as the karma vasana in our Vedic tradition, which is somehow trapping us in a certain pattern. Now we need to liberate ourselves from these patterns as well and really find out our true dharma. And that's why I come back to the dharma, because dharma is nature. What is your inherent nature? So if you cannot be your inherent nature in your dharma, then you suffer. So sometimes our past karma, which comes from our own childhood as well as that of our ancestors, trap us from being ourselves. So ultimately, freedom is to be ourselves. And that's why very often when we talk about the freedom, we say freedom is the state where we don't wear any mask. One of the Sanskrit words for that is called nirvana, literally meaning no masks, no clothes. That's why some people interpret that literally as being naked. Now, it's a metaphoric sense. Being naked means you're not wearing any mask of shame. You are able to be yourself. You're just able to be yourself. And that is the most fundamental freedom that we are looking for, just to be ourselves. That is what is called swadharma, swabhava, swarupa. Many words exist in Sanskrit that talks about this. Swarasa, our own essence. Like even if I want to be a musician and you want to be a musician, we all have our own unique way of creating that music. Maybe you will play the... But even if we both are playing the drum, we still have an essence. I will play the drum in my own way, my own signature. You will play in your own signature. That is what is called swarasa, our essence. So just the freedom to be ourselves. If somebody tells me, no, you cannot play music the way you want, you have to play the way Katya is playing, that's a trap for me. I don't feel free. The same way if somebody tells you, no, you should not play the music like how you want, you have to do how Kausthubha is doing, that is a trap for you. Yes. So that's why fundamentally, we humans are looking for that freedom to be ourselves. Animals and plants are free because they don't want to be like somebody else. A cat doesn't want to be a giraffe. A giraffe doesn't want to be a monkey. A mango doesn't want to be a pineapple. But
Yes.
we compare and we don't want to be ourselves. We don't love ourselves. We want to be somebody else. That's the freedom that we are at a very deep, unconscious, very, very deep level, we are searching.
And sometimes we can experience that, yeah, energy that is knocking on our door of the mask, yeah, and then we become even more crazy.
That's why freedom is a lot defined with together with independence.
Hmm. Yes.
Because if you are not independent, you are not free. For
Yeah.
example, let's say I want to belong to a club. Whatever that club is, it could be a yoga club, it could be a chess club, it could be a religious club. Now, there are rules and regulations that govern that club, right? Now, because there are some rules and regulations that govern that club, we can't be free. Whereas if we don't have the desire to be part of that club, but we want to be independent of that club, independent of any club, then we get freedom. So the concept of kaivalyam and the concept of independence is very important. That's why independence is swatantra. You are independent, you are not dependent on anybody, you are not associated or affiliated with anybody.
Hmm.
So we must not forget that freedom comes only with independence. And independence nourishes freedom as much as freedom nourishes independence.
Yeah, very good. Yeah, I can relate to that a lot.
It's
So,
actually one reason I'm saying that.
guys, just for me.
Not just for you, but I'm sure it is useful for others as well.
Exactly, also for others, I'm sure. So yes, having this mask of individual and collective mask that we have actually means suffering for us deep down inside. So it looks like we are following this some sort of, let's say, spiral path deeper and deeper in our shadow. So, do we have any freedom in choosing to ride or not to ride this wave?
We always have the choice. Whether we decide to empower and choose that choice is totally within ourselves. Unless we are somehow uh, possessed or sick and we are not able to, we are disempowered, like in a state of coma or in a state of depression, or when we are children, for example, very, very young children. As adults, we always can make the choice. Whether we will make the choice, that's an entirely different uh, question. But we can make the choice if we want to. But what we have to remember is when we make a choice and act on that choice, the choice will have some consequences, which are not always in our control. We have to embrace that. The other side is all don't make a choice. If we don't choose to act, that
Mhm.
also has consequences. The problem is, many of us in human beings, we are lazy or fearful or lack the confidence, lack the shraddha to make the choice and follow it up. But somehow we want the consequence of what the choice could have led to us. That's not good. So, for example, if somebody is in a toxic relationship, they're not going to be free, they're going to be trapped in that toxic relationship. Now, if they don't choose to leave that toxic relationship, it has consequences also, as much as if they choose to leave or stay in that relationship, that will also have consequences. Because very often life is lived through relationships, relationship with a partner, relationship with our family members, relationship with our country, relationship with our job, relationship with our environment, nature, relationship with the divine.
Yes.
We live life through a relationship. So, relationships can be toxic or non toxic. And if we make a choice one way or the other, it will have certain consequences. If you don't make the choice, it will have certain consequences. So, of course, we all have the option to choose. So, whether we choose or not, that is completely within our willpower.
Yes. Very important, the willpower and
I use
self-reflection. Yeah.
I use
Yes.
this very carefully, willpower.
Willpower. Good. Yes.
Because many people today make choices based on ego. That's not correct. That's a
Yes.
toxic choice.
Yes, exactly.
That's a toxic choice.
Yeah, willpower. It's a good word. Yeah, good choice. So the suffering can push us into madness, and our psyche descends in the depths where we can meet monsters, fears, some terrible things, ancient creatures. There is psyche's energy. There's full of certain archetypes, energies, and so on. It's alive. So we can do this with therapist. Yeah, we can face this darkness, this our shadows with therapists, or we can face it alone in our life. And facing these energies can drive us even mad or mad, or we can actually transform them in a way and they can lift us from the darkness or even higher than we were before. So, like for example, in ancient times, we know people were with, let's say, shamans descending into their psyche. So the shamans guide the person into deep into their psyche, into the depths, and then in that kind of way they healed because they were lifted up then towards the light. So before going up, we need first to descend. Yes, is this right?
Uh, I think from what you are asking, I try to understand it the best possible way. Don't hide. You are asking whether suffering is essential. You know, um, one of the things that I have learned through my own personal life, which I don't regret at all one bit, uh, where there have been many, many fantastic moments and there has been many traumatic moments as well. I don't look at anything as a suffering or anything as a joy. I look at everything as a lesson. A great teacher if we can learn from it. But if we don't learn from it, suffering is a very, very painful monster that will push us further and further down. There is not one person yet that I have met in the world today, and I don't think in history there has been one person in the world, human in the world, who has never suffered nor has never made any mistakes. If we take the great Rama, for example, in the Ramayana, he is considered the god and the embodiment of Dharma. Dharmatma Satya Sandhascha Ramo Dasharathir Paurushesha Pratitvandaha Sharenim Jahiravanim. Rama is considered the epitome of Dharma, so Dharmatma. And he also suffered many times. He suffered when he lost his wife to Ravana. He suffered when he could not defeat Ravana. That's why Agastya had to come and teach him the Aditya Hridaya. He suffered when he lost his wife again, when he sent her away. So Rama, the God himself, has suffered. So darkness or suffering is not a bad thing. The problem is we are brainwashed through propaganda, and I don't mean modern propaganda only. I mean even our historic stories like English stories where they say, and they lived happily ever after. This never works. So suffering is fundamental in our life. That's why Patanjali is not saying there will be no suffering. Patanjali is saying, Heyam Dukkham Anagatam. Prepare for the suffering that has not yet arrived. He says, be prepared because it's arriving, whether you like it or not.
Yes.
Exactly. The problem is not the suffering itself, the painful moment itself, it is our expectation of it. Now, there's a cricket match. Now, India loses. Why is it suffering for me? Is because I have an expectation that India should win. This is what is called tapa dukkha. Then there is an expectation that things continue and do not change. I wanted my father all my life with me, but things change. He died. I cannot accept that change. Parinama dukkha. Samskara dukkha, habitual tendencies force us to behave in a certain way that is inappropriate in certain context, in certain time. Samskara dukkha. And sometimes gunas take over. We are not even aware what is taking over. This is called guna vritti virodha dukkha. So suffering is essential in life. It is unavoidable. How we respond to it is important. And that is where sometimes we are able to deal with it ourselves. This is called swanishtha. Sometimes we need a teacher to help us, and that is called acharya nishtha. Mm-hmm. And in the Vedic tradition or in the traditional traditions, like you talked about shamans, so even in the South American traditions, in the Maori culture, in the Anagu culture, that is the Australian traditional people's culture, the acharya nishtha, the role of a teacher, is always considered better because we can be taken over by our ego or some of our dark sides or some of our expectations that we don't see the reality very clearly. And this is very important. And this is where there is a difference between an acharya and somehow like an instructor or professor of yoga nowadays we have in many schools, in many ashrams, for example, where the teacher is merely trying to please the student because they look at students as customers. Mm-hmm. The job of a teacher is not to please the student. The job of a teacher is to make the student better.
So how can we how can we compare, let's say, this process of roller coaster going down deeper and more deeper into our psyche, into our shadow? How can we compare this process to a spiritual process or spiritual practices, let's say?
It's always about energy. The more and more I have realized in my own experience studying with my father, when I was studying with him as a student, the teacher student relationship is not just dependent on the information that is exchanged. My father taught me a lot of information. What is Yoga Sutra 1? What is Yoga Sutra 2? What is the meaning of Yoga Sutra 3? He taught me what is Ayurveda, how to take the pulse. There was a lot of informational exchange. But that's not the only thing that happened. There was an intangible, energetic exchange as well that was happening. So when he was teaching me, because I was open to him with full trust, he was walking in the garden of my subconscious structure, clearing out some of the pests which were growing there. And sometimes not clearing immediately, but laying the foundation for them to be cleared as I would mature and as I would come in contact with those parts.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why still today, when I am studying what he taught me, when I'm working with what he taught me, because of this energetic exchange, there's so many revelations that are happening now about the sutra, about the Ayurveda, about the text that did not happen at that time because he had left certain keys inside during these exchanges.
Wow.
And this is what I see happen between me and my students as well. It's very different from reading a book, and that is the
Yeah.
greatness of
Mm-hmm.
the teacher student relationship when there is a heart to heart connection.
Mm-hmm.
The teacher is allowed into the psyche of the student. Nirmana chittani asmita matrat. It goes so deep that there is an exchange of energy,
Yeah.
and that is so profoundly positive if we are with the right teacher.
Yes.
It can be very dangerous if we are with the wrong teacher, and that is why the teacher student relationship is considered to be sacred.
Yes. So, what about without the teacher? We know people who are doing many spiritual practice without teacher. Now online there is all these practices that are, let's say, also ancient and in a way could be also dangerous for the energy. Yeah.
I have two views about this because one view is that it is definitely dangerous because the ego can drive us in certain different directions, and it can be very, very dangerous, and it can be dangerous to that practitioner only. And very often, those who don't teach the teacher, you will see in this context, are very egocentric people.
Hmm.
There's an exception to this case when that person is very deeply spiritually connected to a higher power. This
Hmm.
higher power can be the divine, or it could be an image of the teacher. For example, in the Mahabharata, we have the beautiful example of Ekalavya, a very great archer, who creates a statue of his teacher called Drona. Never met him, never take day-to-day classes, but he honors this image of this teacher as the divine and learns archery on his own,
Hmm.
becomes one of the best archers. So the only exception is when there is not teacher is when there is a connection to a higher power, like a divine. Was connected to a higher power. The Buddha was connected to a higher power. No, they are extremely rare beings.
Yes.
We can't be like them. We cannot be like them. We need a living teacher for that energetic exchange because we don't have that deep access to that great divinity that these wonderful people have.
Yeah. So I know people who ended in psychiatrical hospital because of the attempt of freedom with the spiritual practices. Lately, actually, I hear a lot about that. So, what is happening with these people, in energy of these people? So, what went wrong? What do you think?
This is where I told a little earlier that the prana is not flowing smoothly. So there, when they do inappropriate practices or when they are forcing freedom, when they are forcing independence, certain things break. The energetic channels break. And therefore, it creates this madness or insanity, which is definitely something that needs to be addressed. In certain other contexts where it's eccentricity, the energy will flow very deeply.
Yes. Yeah.
They will never hurt somebody. In certain other contexts, what happens is because we don't allow people to be themselves, and certain people have an immense power of independence, of eccentricity, which is different from their society, but because they are forced to fit in and they are not able to fit in, they go into certain what you call numbing sanctuaries like alcohol, drugs, etc., to numb these kind of experiences, and that damages certain things, and they become violent, and therefore they are admitted to psychiatric hospitals or even in some cases criminal institutions as well. So, if as humanity we all allow people to be who they are, you will see that there is nothing to worry about. If you go to the great city of Varanasi, for example, there are many sadhus who are authentically eccentric and they are not at all harmful. But there are many, many people who pose as sadhus who are drug addicts, and you can see that there is something definitely wrong. For a common person who doesn't know these things, they get confused and then therefore they get into trouble. But for somebody with wisdom, you can see the difference. In eccentricity, the energy will flow.
Okay, good. Good to know. So where is then, let's say, the border between madness and liberation? Is it possible that we have, let's say, two paths on our roller coaster? One is madness, one is liberation, or are they intertwined?
I don't think madness and liberation are ever intertwined. Eccentricity and liberation can be intertwined. This is what I
Okay.
feel. I don't think madness and because madness is something is broken. In liberation or freedom, nothing is broken. It's very fluid. Eccentricity can go together with liberation. A great example is a very, very fascinating sadhaka who wrote the book called Yoga Sudhakara, which is a commentary on the Yoga Sutra. He was called Sadashiva Brahmendra. And he was an eccentric a monk. He was an avaduta. He was naked. He would not wear clothes, and he would just wander around the forest, the village, etc. Not because he was so eccentric and liberated, he didn't care.
Mm-hmm.
But why he was considered great and eccentric is because he never harmed anybody. And sometimes when people would be in front of him, he would not worry about, he would not bother them. He would in fact walk to a corner so that they don't get offended. He would sometimes hide behind trees, hide behind certain things so that he would not offend people. But he would not allow people to define what he did. So he was eccentric, he was not mad. He wrote the beautiful commentary on Yoga Sutra, one of the most simple and lucid commentaries on the Yoga Sutra.
Mm-hmm. So when let's say in our spiritual practice, if we are doing it, the spiritual practice, if we are doing it, so when to stop and when to look for help, what could be the symptoms that we are going more towards, let's say, madness? And are there people who should not attempt even to do spiritual practices?
Well, I think spirituality is a, a birthright for everybody. Everybody can seek spiritual path. It is their choice. Nobody should be forced into it. But in my view, I always believe that it is safer and better to seek a spiritual path under the guidance of a spiritual teacher or spiritual mentor, because the spiritual path is not an easy path. There will be a lot of obstacles on the way, and there'll be a lot of painful moments on the way. Looking at ourselves, I tell you, is not at all a pleasant experience.
Yes.
And there is no spiritual evolution without looking at ourselves.
Yeah.
And that is why to face these kind of reflection, self reflection,
Yeah.
without feeling judged, without feeling despondent, it's always better to have a guide. And when we are confronting these sides in us, there's always the chance that we get pulled by the dark side that
Yes.
are parts of us, and then we get trapped and we get suffer even more. And that is where a teacher, again, is very helpful in pulling us back out of this. It need not be a pleasant experience always between the teacher and the student. That does not mean that it is not appropriate. And just because something is always pleasant at a superficial level, it does not mean that it is helpful. We
Yes.
have we have an acharya here today. I see Acharya
Yeah.
Birju Maharaj. Namaste, sir.
Namaste, sir. Hello. So, Acharya Birju Maharaj, yes, said. So you wrote, ecosystem cannot be governed by an individual, but one can govern oneself to tune oneself with the ecosystem. Yeah. So very good
Of
point.
course, we cannot control the nature. We have to flow with the nature.
Exactly. Hmm. And Sarah Ryan, our dear friend, she's saying so beautiful example of the energy exchange with someone. I think she wrote that when you explained how your father put little keys and little hidden treasures in your psyche, and this is actually what's
Any good
happening.
teacher will do it.
Yes,
Any
exactly.
good teacher should do it.
Should do it, but it's as far as I can see, I try to work like that also. It's really, we need to be really very ethical and responsible and really love people and take care of them also in the future. Yeah.
That's where the trust comes in.
Yeah.
See, I remember in certain moments of the classes with my father, and we would be discussing certain concepts. And suddenly my father will say, you know what, let's go because I have to buy something in the shop. I remember as somebody in my 20s and was very passionate about yoga studies, at that moment I found that quite disturbing. I said, what? I am here to study and you want to go shopping? And he would take me to that. There was a local shop here called the Murugan Departmental Store, and he would go buy something very silly like a toothpaste or something like that. And I would think, what the hell is he doing? You know?
Yes.
And about sometime later, it would dawn on me that the, that excursion was not to hurt me or harm me or provoke me or whatever, and not to buy the toothpaste, but rather it was focused on my observation of the exchange my father had with the shopkeeper, which was relevant to that sutra that we were discussing. But he did not, I could not understand it because my father did not say, oh, here is this example, let me show you. It was just part of a natural life circumstance. Suddenly, it's like almost like I'm telling you in the interview now, okay, I go now. Just to show you how eccentric I am.
Yes, but not so much.
You know, there's a concept in yoga called anuloma and viloma. Anuloma means to go smooth along with the flow. Viloma means to go against the flow, very rough, very almost like an aggressive manner. And one time my father was talking about this to a group of students. And one lady said, I don't understand what is viloma. Can you explain? Please. My father said, no, I can't, and walked out of the room. Now, everybody thought that my father was angry with that question. It took them 2-3 days to realize that he was showing them the example of what is viloma, how it feels.
Yes.
So, this is where the energetic exchange is so fantastic because it's not just the information that is, and we have to remember we don't learn only through information exchange.
Yes. Mostly we learn from energetical exchange, yeah, and then we realize this maybe years after or months after, let's say, yeah, yeah. So,
Yes.
so eccentricity of freedom is like walking on the edge, experiencing liberation and madness at the same time. So we need to be very skilled dancer for that. What do you, as an eccentric person, recommend to all of us, all of the seekers?
Well, the first thing I would say is choose a good dance partner and choose the dance that is most suitable for you.
Mhm.
The dance partner here is the teacher, and the dance that is suitable for you is your spiritual movement, your spiritual path.
Mhm.
You can't imitate another person's process. It's you have to follow your process only, no matter how different it is from other people. When I look at my own path with my own father, who had other students as well, how he taught me is so different from how he taught other people. Was
Uh-huh.
not the same process. And this is what I do, how I teach my students is very different
Mm-hmm.
from each other. How I
Yeah.
work with you is different from how I work with somebody else, different from how I work with somebody else, because each one has their own path.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the dance. The dance is different. The dance partner may be the same, but the dance is different.
Mm-hmm. Great. So we need to be more embracing our eccentricity, I think.
I think
I
if we all embraced our eccentricity, we would not be considered eccentric at all, because eccentric would become the new normal.
yeah, this would be great. Yeah.
That's what is that's what is healthier for humanity when we
Mm-hmm.
actually embrace our true nature.
Mm-hmm. So Maria Alejandra Sierra Hernandez, hello. She said, she wrote, seems like growing with a spiritual tradition, well settled at a young age, is better for a self regulated behavior in a society. Do you agree with that?
It could be an advantage, but not always, because a lot depends on also our own receptivity.
Yeah.
See, I grew up in a family where spirituality was always present. But among my father's children, I was the last one to embrace it. Even my younger sister started practicing yoga before me. When she was even more younger, she started. So I was a bit late compared to the others. So it does not matter so much, but it could help to some degree. But it's not the only criteria.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But it could help. It definitely can help, especially if somehow there is a grace that you receive from your ancestors.
Mm-hmm.
Then it's extremely helpful in this path.
Yes. So I think I will work more on my eccentricity for the fashion. Uh, you are a very good example at that. Yeah. And some other eccentricities. I will for sure be.
You have to show all the people what t-shirt you're wearing because everybody did not see it fully clearly.
Oh my gosh.
See, friends, too glam to give a damn.
This is my new motto, eccentric motto. So it should be I'm too eccentric to give a
See,
damn.
this is the other thing is we must not try to be eccentric just for the sake of it. We just have to try to be ourselves.
Yeah.
Whether it's eccentric or not, it really doesn't matter.
Yes, but it's good to validate it and to actually give here, let's say, a permission to be more eccentric. For sure, it helps me as always to have the space for all the intensity that is going on in me, especially lately. So it's very good to say, yeah, it's let's do that, yeah. So I recommend all our friends here on this interview now and later on when they will also listen to us to embrace the eccentricity and the all the true essence in us. Yeah.
Embrace your own essence.
Yes.
This is what is self love.
This is
If
what.
you don't love yourself as you are, how can you expect somebody to love you? If you cannot respect your own essence, how can you expect somebody else to respect you?
Exactly. Yeah. Okay, so thank you very much. I think we had Sarah just said, great motto. Glam rhymes better than eccentric. Yes, this is why it's on t-shirt. Thank you, Sarah. So, Kaustupa, I would like to invite you to chant for us, a little chant for the end. And with this, we will say goodbye. Thank you very much, my dear friends, for joining us. And thank you, Dr. Kausthub Desikachar, for the wonderful teachings that we received.
तच्चयोरावृणीमहे गातै यज्ञाय गातै यज्ञ दैवी स्वस्तिरस्तु नः स्वस्तिर्मानुषेभ्यः ऊर्ध्वं जिघातु भेषजम् शन्नो अस्तु द्विपदे शञ्चतुष्पदे ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Namaste, dear friends. Namaste, Katya.
Namaste, dear friends. Namaste, Kaustubha.